Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Friday Food Fight. My name is Wes Christian, CEO of Food Handler Solutions, and I'm joined once again by Bart Christian, nationally recognized school nutrition industry speaker. And we're going to be talking about a topic that could not be more important here at the beginning of this year of 2021, and that is, how do we make this year the best year that we have ever had? And Bart, I'm really excited to dive into this topic. I've got some great material here, and I know you do as well. But let's start off with just something basic, just to get us warmed up. Okay. Let everyone know here a little bit about how you got started and what really keeps you going in the speaking industry.
Well, I think that, what got me started, I'm an accidental speaker. I never set out to be a speaker. What I did was I got into the child nutrition industry, fell in love with the industry. Was doing food safety classes, and one time a lady asked me, she said, "Bart, I moved from Georgia to Arizona, and they said, we love the way you talk, and so can you come and do something else for us beside food safety?" And I said, "Sure, like what?" And she said, "How about customer service?" So, being naive, I said, sure. So I got on, I never done a customer service presentation in my life, got on the internet, found some PowerPoint presentations, kind of morphed them into working for child nutrition, gave that talk. They really liked it. She told somebody, they asked me to come speak, and they told two friends, and they told two friends, and that whole story goes. And that became my first book, which is Simple Solutions for Positive Communication, which grew into my second book, which is dealing with difficult people, and has kind of blossomed into a part-time speaking career where I've gotten the opportunity to go out and speak to literally tens of thousands of child nutrition workers. And that's pretty much all I talk to, because that is my passion. My passion. I joke that child nutrition is kind of like the mafia. Once it gets in your blood, you can't get it out. And I just really have fallen in love with it. And I just love watching faces light up of child nutrition superheroes when I can connect with them, just how important and vital the job is they do every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting hearing how people get started, because it really boils down to they fell in love with it. They, had a passion for it. But things that you fall in love with and things you have are passionate, not even easy. And this year has been an extremely trying year for really all of us, regardless of the industry, but specifically on school nutrition and food service workers, just because it's been a year unlike anything we've ever had before. It's really tested that passion and that love for what you do. What's something that's really kept you motivated this year and kept you passionate? Because speaking has been shut down. Big group meetings have been shut down.
Right.
So a lot of that has really been put on pause for you. What's something that keeps you motivated on a day-to-day basis and keeps you excited about what's to come?
Well, I'm blessed to have another company. We have Southwest Training Systems, and we provide training and education to school districts across Arizona, New Mexico, and the western third of Texas. So, I've been able to stay in the business. I've been able to stay, like I said, I'm an accidental speaker. I never really set out to do that core business. And so, I've been able to stay active in that. And during this time, given the type of work that we do, we've been more in demand than ever, really, because of the need for training and the need for, more and better products to clean with and things like that. So one of the big things that's kept me going this year is just providing resources. You and I have worked together to provide lots of resources to people. I just drafted another document today that we're going to be sending out tomorrow, and on 5 tips revenue of your child nutrition department. So things like that, just trying to always stay current, stay contemporary with what's going on. And you're right, it's ever changing. So staying contemporary has been a constant change, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Talk to us about, some of those changes and different things that really, I guess, kept you motivated with some of those different changes. You talked about writing an article and staying in front of people, really trying to provide resources. Where did that kind of mindset, because obviously that's a big pivot, it's a big change from what you're traditionally used to doing with going and doing on-site training and things of that nature. What was the inspiration that you had to really kind of make that pivot, and what, I guess, advice could you give to people out there that are maybe feeling like it's just the day-to-day grind at this point?
Well, what got me going to begin with is at the beginning of all this, there was an outcry for resources on procedures of how to do things that nobody had ever done before. And so, we worked together to put those things together to get them out to people just as a service. And we got them out to our Southwest Training System customers, and they just loved it. And so we, in turn, turned it loose to the world. And was very well received. And it was, because it was so well received, we just continued to grind out things. I will be honest with you, the last, 60 days or so have been kind of I don't know, it's been so, I've had a kind of a stagnation in my mind and I think and as I talk to a lot of other people, I think a lot of people find themselves in that, sometime around Thanksgiving, it sort of began to set in that we're going to be this way for a while.
Yeah.
And then that almost paralyzing thinking that, well, what do I do now? And I'll be honest with you, I read a lot and I stay up with what's going on. And I was involved in a conference last week that the School Nutrition Association put on, and it inspired me. And what inspired me was is there are so many directors out there and so many school districts out there that are really turning the corner and making the pivot and beginning to see the revenues rise and beginning to see the departments get out of line. But then there's other directors and departments that are not. And what I saw the difference is that the ones that were not, it wasn't because they weren't doing the work. It wasn't because they weren't being, diligent about what they would do. It's because they just really simply didn't realize all the creativity and the resources that are available to them from their peers. And so what I decided to do in this document that I just wrote was to just share some of the things I've learned. I made calls to many directors this week, talking to them about what they're doing, how they're seeing their revenue come in, how they're seeing things grow, how they're being able to turn things around, interact with the community on a wider scale to get more meals out. And that is what I did. I took those conversations and wrote 5 tips for thriving in this pandemic, besides just surviving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you mentioned some books that, a second ago, and you mentioned that you love to read and things of that nature. And it sounds like, you mentioned 60 days ago, kind of having that little bit of a lull as the holidays hit and kind of having that realization that we're going to be in this position for a little bit longer. What type of books and, I guess, positive mindset things can you offer to people? Maybe some good books you've read recently to really help if you are a person that is maybe already in that kind of a little bit of depression, or just looking at this is just going to last for a really long time and feeling a little anxious about things. What types of things would you suggest that they read, that they focus on to really help pull themselves out of that and stay focused and stay positive for tomorrow?
Well, the first thing is that I have not, aside from election night, I have not watched a second of news in about 4 months. And I mean, not a second. I've read the news. I've read things on the internet, read newspapers and things like that. But reading is quite a bit different than seeing the talking heads tell you the same thing over and over and over and over again. So, I've divorced myself from that. That's one thing. I've tried to, in the last couple of months, I've really tried to focus my mind with the things I watch being uplifting and being positive. But I've sort of gone back to some of the classics. My wife, people binge programs, right? They binge things on Netflix, binge things on Amazon. My wife and I went through about a month of binging the Andy Griffith Show.
That's a great one.
It's a great one. And the thing about the Andy Griffith Show is this: every episode has a positive message. Every episode is that people are respectful of each other. There's conflict, but it always ends in a good way. Everybody tries to work things out. And so we just decided to start putting things in our mind that were going to uplift us. As far as my reading goes, I've read tons of books. I mean, one of the best books I've read that you recommended to me in the last 3 or 4 months is The Purple Cow by Seth Godin, that talks about, setting yourself apart from the pack. And this is the greatest time I've ever seen where the opportunity to set yourself apart is there. And that's a little bit, you got to be a little aggressive about it, and you got to reach out and grab it. But that opportunity has never been greater. That's one contemporary book I've read. But I've kind of gone back to the classics again in my reading. I'm probably the most influential book in my life is the Bible. And I've been going back and studying more and more in the Psalms and the Proverbs, because those are really the secrets of life, and they tell you a lot of things about people and about the way you should behave and the way you should act and the way you should take things, that I've just found invaluable. I've gone back and read Zig Ziglar's "See You at the Top," which is a great book, great classic old book, but it's uplifting, it's positive. It talks about getting through tough times. And then I've gone back and read "Having Your Best Year Ever" by Jim Rohn. Yeah. Which you can find that book also as a kind of a newly updated version called "Your Best Year Ever," and it's by Darren Hardy. But those reading, kind of binging on in the last few months, simply because I'm trying to recharge my battery, and I found that I recharge my battery best when I go back and read what uplifted me before, instead of looking for something new. I think so many times we search for something new and different when the answer is sitting on the bookshelf right behind us. Right. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting you mentioned Darren Hardy and his book, and then also the Jim Rohn's book. Because I actually had just started going back and reading some older books, not as old as what you just described in some scenarios, but ones that I had read, 10 or so years ago that just had made such a major impact on my life, and really led to, the development of our company, School Food Handler and Food Handler Solutions, and were just great inspirations and motivating factors in really pushing through the tough times that ultimately every new company runs into, but that we're all really going through right now. And a couple of those were another book by Darren Hardy, which was The Compound Effect, which has just made just an enormous impact on my life, with just really helping me to really understand exactly why we do what we do and how to get the most out of every single day, and how every action that we take ultimately has a compounding effect on the future actions that we want. So, starting at the end result and working your way back, that tells you where you need to go tomorrow to get to the end. Another really great one that I read, I know you've read this one as well. You might have actually told me about this one, but it was by Gary Keller, The One Thing. And if there is one book that I could recommend during these times, is The One Thing, just simply because of this. The One Thing is as simple as it sounds. But the book teaches you so many different skills about focusing on a singular item and finding out what that most important singular item is in the moment to keep you moving forward to the end goal. And it's just a really great book. And I think in times like these, we can get overwhelmed really quickly with how much stuff there is going on, and to turn off the news and figure out what we need to focus on, to really focus on making ourselves happy, that internal happiness. What is the one thing that we can do right now to get to that happiness level?
We know the great that when every new hire that we have at Southwest Training Systems has to read 2 books. We give them first The Compound Effect, and they read that, and then we give them The One Thing, and they read that. Everybody on my staff has read those 2 books, and the clarity that those 2 books give you. The one line I love from The One Thing is the question that overrides all other questions: is what is the one thing that I can do right now such that it will make everything else either easier or unnecessary. Yeah. And that's just a great one, because Zig Ziglar had a great quote. He said, if you got to eat a frog, you just don't want to look at that thing too long. And so many of us do that. We stare at that one thing that we know we need to do, but we let everything pile up on top of it, and then suddenly, that one thing that's really vital gets pushed to the side, and then it becomes an emergency. Yeah. And that's really what we don't want to do. And that's why I think that those 2 books, I wish I had mentioned those, because those are 2, I think, in my library must reads.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you mentioned a couple of quotes there, Zig Ziglar, and another one from The One Thing. If you could pick a quote or a statement or just something funny, motivational, and post it in every single cafeteria, restaurant, if you get a billboard on the side of the highway and have this one quote in 10 words or less, what would that quote be?
Well, I think, if I was going to post a geared towards child nutrition staffs and child nutrition heroes, I would say something like this: do it with love, do it with kindness, because they can taste it in every bite. Now that may be a little bit more than 10 words, but another great book I read one time was called Soup. And the moral of that book is that, why can you go to grandma's and grandma makes the most wonderful dish you've ever ate, and you eat it and you go, oh my God, this is wonderful. And you say, grandma, I got to have that recipe. And grandma gives you the recipe, and you take it home and you make it, and you're on the phone with grandma saying, okay, and I do this, I do that, I do this. And then you make it and you pull it out of your oven and you're so excited. You take that first bite and it ain't as good as grandma's. And the reason is because grandma pours so much love into that preparation of that meal for her family. And it's the same thing with any kind of food service operation. It doesn't matter what the food is. If it's placed in a package with love, if it's done with kindness, that karma, that aura kind of comes through when those children open those packages up, no matter where they open them up at.
Yep, absolutely. Adversity happens to all of us. And, this year has been a tough year, and it's important to keep these motivational items and this positive energy in our lives. But talk to us about maybe a failure, an adversity, a shortcoming that's happened to you. Maybe not this year, could have happened this year, but just sometime in your past. It could be work-related, personal, but tell us about that experience and how you overcame that.
Well, I'm 58 years old, so I've had lots of failures, and I've had lots of successes, and I've had lots of successes that I thought were failures, and had lots that turned out to be failures, and lots of failures that actually turned out to be successes. So, I can't really place my finger on one single thing, but I can tell you this is that, I go back to Zig Ziglar. He's been a mentor of mine for my whole life. And he was sitting on a podium one time and they asked him that very same question. They said, can you point to one thing that you would change? One thing that you'd do differently? One thing that if you could go back and change that one thing, what would you do? He looked down and he took a deep breath and he looked back up at the audience. He said, I can't think of anything that I would change different, that I would do differently. He said, because I would be afraid that if I did anything differently, I would not be right here, right now. And this is I can't think of any other place I'd rather be than sitting right here, right now. So, that's kind of been my mantra as I look back at life. I will tell you this, I wish that if I had any things to do over with, I would have spent more time with you. I'd have spent more time with your sister as you were coming up, because to be honest with you, I found myself, like so many people do, habit that you feel like you're doing the right thing. You feel like but in reality, you're kind of taking time away from people that you can never get back. And so I think that's the one thing if I would give people an advice would be just don't miss the moments. Don't let life and work just cause you to miss the moments, because the moments are what life is made of. We spend so much time planning and doing things and working, but we miss those moments with our kids, with our wife, with our family, that we can never get back. We never can.
Wow, what an amazing message, because I hear this all the time, and I've even suffered from, the same, well, what if I had just done this differently feelings, or if I could just go back and change this action, then what I'm going through right now would be so much easier. We can oftentimes look and say, what if, but what if we did something differently? Where we're at right now in the future, and the future successes and the future joys and the things that we have yet to have come into our lives might not come into our lives. You might not meet that special person. You might not end up, living where you live. You might have all of these things different. And ultimately, looking at where you're at right now and loving every minute of it and finding the joy and really cherishing those moments are just so valuable. I mean, you mentioned spending more time with your kids. I mean, I've got a 2.5-year-old and a newborn infant, and I'm blessed to be able to spend a lot of time with them. But I mean, just the 2.5-year-old has grown up so fast. I mean, it's 2.5 years, and I feel like he was born. We were leaving the hospital yesterday. But it really is. Time just goes by so fast. We just have to smile and enjoy the moments.
You do, yeah. Just have to. And we all got to do our job. We got to do things. But I think sometimes we think that, we're doing hard for something But if we really take a step back, we probably could take a little more time and spend in those moments. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about investing in yourself. What's something that you have invested in that you would recommend to others that will make an impact, positive impact on their lives in 2021? It could be something you've made a financial impact, could be something that you just invested energy and time into, but something that has made a positive return for you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Quiet time. Quiet time has been the investment that I've been committed to for the last couple of years. That's getting up a little bit earlier in the morning, getting my coffee, finding a comfortable chair, opening a book. In my case, it's the Bible, but opening a book, uplifting, and spending some time in that, and then spending some time in meditation and prayer. Spending time. That's been the investment I made in myself. Has been time. Now, I mean, you know this. You know, when I have been known to be high strung, and I have found in the last 2 or 3 years that I have been able to abate that, and that has been, it's been miraculous. You know, it's been miraculous in the way I think and the way I'm able to handle pressure and chaos and stress. It's miraculous. So, I mean, that's been the investment I made is the time, quiet time. And for some, you know, I know what people say. You know, they say that, you know, I get up early anyway. I don't get much sleep. You know, all I can tell you is it has given me a tremendous peace of mind, that quiet time. And I would get up an hour early if I had to. I don't. I get up half hour, maybe 45 minutes earlier than I normally would, and spend half hour, 45 minutes in quiet time. But it's just amazing quiet can do for you, because we're in such a hustle and bustle world now. Even with COVID and even everything's going on, it's still chaotic. And if you don't spend time trying to just collect yourself, collect your mind, understand there's something greater than you, I think it can get overwhelming. Well, I know it can get overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my greatest investment here in the past, I guess 9-12 months, the one that I have gotten the most value out of is in a similar kind of avenue as what you're mentioning with time, but I've been journaling a lot, and it's quiet time, yes, but really composing thoughts, and honestly sometimes not composing thoughts, and just writing whatever is in my brain at the moment. It's so relaxing, and so it's just relief. It's instant relief. If you're feeling anxious, you're feeling overwhelmed, you have any feelings of depression at all, you journal it out, and it's just amazing. You feel like a weight has been lifted off of your shoulders. As soon as you get it out of your mind and you stop internalizing it, I can almost feel my blood pressure lower. I can feel my heart rate slow, and it's just so calming. But journaling has been the biggest mental exercise past year that through all of this has really made the greatest impact on my day-to-day attitude.
Yeah, I've been journaling every day for the better part of the last 15 years. I have got a stack of those little black and white composition books that I told my wife, I said, when I'm gone, give those to my kids so they'll know just how screwed up I really was. But I do that every day. You know, I write every day, and there's been days when I tell you a fascinating thing about that, Wes, is that if you go back and look at past journal, you go back and get an old journal from a year ago and just start thumbing through it. There's two things going to come to you. Number one is there's going to be pages you're going to read and you're going to literally go, well, that was stupid, to think that way. And there's going to be other pages that you're going to read and go, oh God, you're going to gain some insight from the past you, if that makes any sense. And Absolutely. I've done that a lot. And I find that to be, I've gone back and read some older, and they'll also write down goals that you have, and you run across those, you'll accomplish that goal. Subconsciously, it just started working on you. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of journaling. I think it's a great healing kind of habit.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I've been doing recently is really focusing, and this was a difficult one, especially in the world of COVID right now, with a lot of things being shut down or open one day and shut the next day. But I've really been focusing on at-home workouts and just making sure that I stay physically in shape so that I can deliver my best to each day. Because I'll be honest, for the first better part of 6 months when COVID hit, I mean, living in Southern California, everything was shut down. Gyms were shut down. I couldn't go to the gym anymore. I found it very hard to motivate to do workouts. But I started setting goals for myself. I set goals for, I've gained this weight. I want to lose this weight in, X amount of days. So that means that I need to set eating habit goals and I need to set workout goals. And it's honestly, my workouts have been as simple as going for hikes, spending a lot of time outside, getting fresh air, playing with my kids, going for walks, walking them, pushing the stroller. Working out can be as simple as just, taking a walk around the neighborhood or taking a walk around, town. But, really trying to get creative with working out and staying in shape. It was a struggle at first, but I'm starting to love it now. There's lots of free resources, free classes. A lot of coaches that were doing outs and a group style things are doing Zoom workouts now, and a lot of free resources out there that people can find. But one other tip that I would say is don't sacrifice your physical health during these times and in this year, because we are going to see a very similar type of situation with gyms and things of that nature. So if you were a gym rat before, you might still have to wait to get back in there. You have to get a little creative in 2021, but don't let your personal health sacrifice.
Well, there's a verse that says, "Love thy neighbor as you love yourself." It's true. It's true. But I've always kind of paraphrased that a little bit and said it's very difficult for you to love your neighbor, that be your spouse, anybody around you, effectively, unless you're loving yourself. You can't take care of somebody else if you don't take care of yourself first. Sometimes, and that may sound selfish, but it's really not, because my mantra is, I ask you to take care of you for me, so that we can have that fullness of life. And I think that's just, so many people don't. I mean, then during this time, I hope that people are realizing the value of activity, because in a lot of places it was taken away from us for a while. And I hope they're looking for other ways. Critical to get outdoors, and it's critical to get your blood pressure up just a tad. That might mean a brisk walk, or in my case, chasing a 6-month-old dog around. Now that was our COVID purchase, was a brand new puppy. So, but yeah, I mean, there's a plethora of ways to get out and get moving, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to me about, I want to know about some new behavior, maybe beliefs, mantras. You mentioned, your one mantra that you got from Zig earlier. What new habits have you developed in the past year, or really have been reminded of in the past year, that are making positive impacts on your life moving forward?
Well, a mantra I heard from Phil Robertson, the Duck Dynasty guy.
Okay.
And he said, just a few simple words that really stuck with me. I was watching an interview with him one day, and he said, "Make a valiant attempt to be good." Make a valiant attempt to be good. He said, it's so easy not to be. It's so easy not to be nice. It's so easy not to be kind. It's so easy not to say hello to your neighbors, especially when we're wearing masks that block out half of a person's face. But don't stop. Don't stop. So my one of the habits I've really tried to focus, I've always speak to people, but I've really almost making sure that I make eye contact with people and say hello and ask them how they're doing, mask and all. And you can see them just sort of almost a relief to know that there's actually another person. We're not all these drones walking around with masks on our face, that we are all actually people. And I make a point to speak to the grocery store clerks and everybody that I come in contact with, more now than ever, because I think more now than ever, people are starving for human contact. and a human contact outside of that little bubble that they live in. And because we are a social people, we're a social creature, and that's how we gain strength. And I mean, if you gain your best information, your best emotions and your best feelings from other people, which we do, this time in so many ways is robbing a lot of people of that. And that's been a habit that I've developed. I've into that thinking that I think is so easy to fall into, truly and honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I've actually, I was reminded several months ago, during this pandemic, impact on my day-to-day activities, especially when things pop up out of nowhere. Hear about something in the news that is just completely unexpected and just outrageous. And the equation is pretty simple. It's E plus R equals O. And ultimately, the events that are going to happen tomorrow are completely out of our control. And the next or react in the happiness away. But what you've done is you've decided that you're going to respond to the equation. You're going to take a positive approach to what's going on. Say hello to that person at the checkout. Say hello to people as you walk past them. Continue to open doors for people. You're responding in a positive manner because you want a positive outcome, which is the O. And a lot of people aren't looking and starting with the end in sight, reacting and a lot of times reacting negatively to the events that we're all going through, and it's giving them a negative outcome. But very easily can response or change that reaction to a response, a positive response, and have a completely more.
I've learned to, in almost every, focus on what I want to happen. Learns, okay, I'm in this situation. What do I want to happen? And then I think about, okay, then what do I need to do to try to make that happen? And so many people, you're right, they don't think about the end. They're just thinking about the middle. And it's a different way of thinking. It truly is. And sometimes it's hard. You come home from a hard day and you've had a hard day at work and you've kind of beat up and you had a disappointment. And you walk in the door and your wife is in a bad mood. She's had a hard day. So if you both start belly aching to each other, the outcome's not going to be what you want. So when I have days like that and I walk in the door and my wife's having that same attitude, I take a deep breath and go, okay, this is what I want to happen. And I want to have a good night. So I take a deep breath, I walk in and I talk to her about her day, let her share with me. Because ultimately I found out if you ask enough questions of somebody else, and share with them, because what's everybody's favorite subject?
Themselves.
It's themselves.
It's the topic everyone knows the most about.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So if you ask them questions and ask them about themselves, you know what? They're going to give you a chance to talk about you. Yeah. But you need to talk to them first, because then there's that emotion that you get with people. Because I found that even strangers, I start talking to them, asking them questions, and we have a conversation. And you know what? Ultimately, they start asking me questions back. And there's a connection, there's a connection, and I think that's what is desperately needed today.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. In our last couple of minutes here, what kind of things have you become better? This is a little bit of a shift. What type of things have you become better at saying no to, and what are the approaches you use that have helped you tactfully say no to these things. It could be an event, someone invites you to an event. It could be something that you say no to that maybe is a work item that you have on your agenda, but you say, I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to push that out. That's unimportant. I've reprioritized, and these are the most important things. What are some things that you just on a daily basis have gotten better at saying no to?
Well, as far as daily things go, work. A lot of people find themselves working at home. You and I do. We find ourselves doing that more and more. So things can pile up. I've learned to prioritize things and tackle items in groups of 3. You know, a lot of times people they have a to-do list with so many things on it. So I've learned to say no to the to-do list. Push it to the side, pick out 3 things, write it on a sticky note, the 3 things, and do those 3 things first. And then when I'm done, I throw that sticky note away and I go to the next 3 things. But it's helped me to stay focused. You know, I've kind of started to learn to say no to clutter. You know, having so much clutter around, clutter in front of me, clutter on my desk, clutter. You know, I've learned to say no to that, and it's given me a lot more focus. Number one, as far as things that people ask me to do, to be honest with you, I've learned that it's people ask you to do things, and they're not have faith in you to be able to do it. I'm a Rotarian. I'm in the Rotary Club, and there's always projects. Even during now, there's projects. But I picked out a project that I really like, and that's working at the food bank. I work at the food bank every Saturday, and I really enjoy that. And so when other projects come up and people ask me to do things, I politely tell them, you know, well, look, I'm really happy in this project, but let me recommend somebody to you that I think could be an excellent fit. And let me know if that doesn't work out, and let's see what we can do. That's a really tactful way of saying no. It's edifying somebody else, because there's always somebody you can recommend, because you and I both know lots of sharp people. And that's one thing I've learned to do. Another thing I've learned to do is simply just tell people that I just don't have time. You know, it's an honor to be asked. I would really like to do it, but to be honest with you, I just don't have the time right now. But keep me in mind, and maybe in the future, we can get asked. I mean, you can have things. I mean, given to the community. Does the plan fit in my plan of taking care of my family? Does it fit in my plan of taking care of my business? And if it doesn't, then, you know, it just doesn't.
Mm-hmm. You know, the biggest thing that I've implemented, and I've done this for the past year or a year and a half now, but it's a strategy called time blocking. And it's actually helped me in this particular area of saying no, because I'll explain what time blocking is if you're not familiar with it. But time blocking is basically where I allot specific amounts of time every single day to projects. I will allot an amount of time for, like you mentioned, having a list, you know, your 3 items that you're going to work on. I allot a certain amount of time to those projects. During that time block, I turn off my phone, I turn off my email, I don't let distractions come in, and ultimately it prevents you from having to say no to the random things that pop up. Because ultimately, you know, I would say the majority, if not all of the people that are watching this show are not dealing with, you know, blood transfusions. We're not dealing with nuclear physics. Things can wait a short period of time while you get done with your task, because ultimately, if you can get done with the things that are really dominating your mind, you'll have more time to say yes to other projects. It will free your day up after you get done with those, so that you can respond to the emails and say, hey, I was working on a project, I've got time now, let's knock this out. Instead of having it where you're working on these 3 items and then you have that phone call that comes in. It pulls you away from those 3 items. You then transition to helping someone else with another project. Then you try to work on your project again. Well, then another phone call or an email comes in. And ultimately, you get to the end of the day, you haven't completed your list. You've helped 5 other people with their items. You feel completely unsatisfied with how productive you've been. And then you go into the day feeling like you're behind. It's a cascading effect, that it's a snowball effect that really never ends unless you put things in place to give yourself the ability to successfully come out at the end of the day feeling accomplished with completing your task, and also having the time and ability to help others with theirs. And that's been the biggest strategy that's really helped me with preventing me from having to say no to people.
And that time blocking principle is in the one thing.
It is.
Yeah, it is in the one thing. And I admire you for that, because that's one of the things I admire about you, and it frustrates me about you all at the same time. Because I'm not necessarily that great of a time blocker. I've learned to do it, but I tend to my life. I am very easily drawn away by a phone call from a customer. I'm staff. Mm-hmm. So I understand what you're saying. The three things has saved me, but I still find myself being pulled from place to place. If anybody's thinking about time blocking, look into it, because this is great. Wesley is an extremely productive young man in what he does.
Well, and a lot of that productivity actually came from another book that I read. The One Thing's fantastic, but there was another book by Tim Ferriss called 4-Hour Workweek, and he talks about time blocking in that book as well. He actually takes it a step further, and with the time blocking, he sets a timer. And, you know, the whole concept, and this is not going to work for a lot of people, and I fully understand that, but you can still take this concept and 4 hours the time if you do the math on that. But he set a block of time and said, I have to get done with all of these tasks in this block of time. He was able to get done with a lot, if not all, of the tasks that he had on his agenda for that day, because as soon as that timer went off and that block of time was gone, he was done for the day. He wasn't working again until the next day, or the next day in some cases. So if you take that same philosophy, and like I said, that's not going to apply for everyone. You can't, not all of us can set a block of time and then not touch anything else for the rest of the day. But what you can do is you can pick out specific blocks and amounts of time for a task. Look at a task and say, about how long should this take me? Not will it take me, but should it take me? Should it take me 5 minutes to respond to emails? How long am I going to spend, actually in my email? 30 minutes, 45 minutes, get done with all my emails, and then move on to a different task. And don't open your email up again until a later time. Project in that block of time, it will prevent you from dragging something out for the entire day. And that's another thing that I've done is, I'll open up email, I'll check email at a couple of periods throughout the day. I'll check it in the morning, and then I'll check it in the afternoon. That's the only time my email opens up during the day. I get all of my emails responded to, but I don't have that slow trickle in of emails throughout the day that constantly pull me away from other tasks. So little time blocking and just allotting specific amounts of time for specific tasks has really been a major production tool that I've used in the past that I'll continue to encourage you to implement it in 2021, because it definitely will change the amount of time you have in a day to get your work done.
I'll tell you this, if everybody watching will ask themselves this one simple question: how many of my emails absolutely, positively have to be answered right now? And if you'll look at it like that, you're going to find that just about none of them need to be answered right now. So when the little notification dinger goes off on your computer, which you should have turned off, by the way, telling you that you have an email, and you immediately are drawn away from that project that you're on, your mind jumps to your email. So your mind can only think about one thing at a time. Multitasking is a lie. Multitasking is a fallacy. You cannot multitask. Your mind, psychologically, it's been proven you can only think on one thing at a time. But what your mind can do is bounce back and forth really, really fast. So what happens is when you're working on your project, your email dinger, you turn your attention to that, your mind stops thinking on this. It takes a period of time to get back on track. And if you keep doing that over and over during the day, just like Wesley said, you'll find yourself at the end of the day with, one of three things done and one more thing on your list and three things you got to do when you could have gotten all 3 done if you'd have just blocked off that time. So I think that's a fantastic principle.
Yeah. Well, we're at the end of our time here, and I want to, end with just some final words. So, any final thoughts, suggestions, words of wisdom, advice, humor, anything that you'd like to leave our viewers with today?
I want to give you 2 quotes. I want to give you 2 things, and I'm going to read them because I don't want to mess them up. One, kind of my talking about thinking on things and focusing your mind in the right direction. This is something that Paul said. Paul said, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Think about those things. Think about the things that build you up, that build your family up, that build your community up, that build your workplace up. And take your mind away from those things that are robbing you of that, like the news, like the negativity, like those things. No, because I am no less informed than I'm as informed as anybody out there. I would challenge people to that. But I don't watch the news. I read, I pay attention, but I think on those things that are good and they're pure and they're lovely. And another quote that has always stuck with me is from the great Jim Rohn. And he said simply this: don't be a victim of yourself. And so many times, and it's easy to be a victim of ourself. So I want to encourage you, as we part today, think on those things that are good, true, pure, lovely, commendable, and don't be a victim of yourself. And going back to the time blocking thing, remember that great quote from Zig Ziglar: if you got to look at that frog, if you got to eat that frog, you don't want to look at him too long. So make sure you prioritize things and get things done. And you'll make this a great year. This, just because what's going on right now does not have to rob you of the year. I think a lot of us let last year be taken from us in a lot of ways, but you don't have to let that happen. No, if there's a hobby, or if something you want to read, if there's a skill, now is the time to invest in yourself, whatever that may be. So if you invest in yourself, you'll have a gas tank full of love to give to other people. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much all I got, Wes. God bless. It's been a great debate. What have you got to say as we part?
The one thing that I would say is everyone out there, make 2021 the year of gratitude. I can't impress being grateful for the things that you have in your life enough. It is the one thing that will keep you whole. It is the one thing that will ground you. It is the one thing that will get you through tough times. We all have things to be grateful for, an abundance of things. If you're watching this, I'll give you one right now. You have the ability to see. If you can't see this and you're listening to it, well, you have the ability to hear. Those are 2 real easy ones. Gratitude doesn't have to be complicated, and you don't have to get really, really deep into it. Start small. Start with the obvious things that you're grateful for. And then once your mind starts getting in that routine of being grateful on a daily basis, and journal it, write it down, write the things that you're grateful down. That way you can keep track of them, reread them on tough days. You can think of new ones on good days, but be grateful. Make 2021 the year of gratitude.
Yeah, I'll promise you this. If you're in a dark place right now and you're having a hard day, it's been a tough day, been a tough week, been a tough month, been a tough year, sit down with a piece of paper and write down 10 things that you're grateful for. I'm not going to say it's going to change everything, but I say if you write down 10 things and you really think about those things with your heart, you will stand up differently. You will feel differently when you walk away from that piece of paper, and the difference will be good. Mm-hmm. So I could not agree with that anymore, Wesley.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you so much for being on the show. Everyone out there, thank you for watching this episode of Friday Food Fight. We'll be here again next week with another amazing guest, and we'll see you at 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time next Friday. Have a great weekend, everyone.